Hey everybody, it's Jeremy. Welcome back to Dreamers Game 1. This is the end of the game. So, this video is just going to be, we're going to go through the view history button, which I actually think I learned that this existed in this game. I've since used it in others, but I did not know that this existed many moons ago. I never see anyone use this at the end of the game. I guess partially probably because, I mean, most people, I mean, a lot of the times you're not around at the end of the game in Dominions because you died, so that happens. Anyways, we're gonna do the view history, and we're gonna go through. We'll look at a couple of different perspectives and talk about a bunch of different things. Talk about, you know, how some things went, what I was thinking, how I feel about certain stuff, etc., and see how it goes. The first thing we're gonna do is try to do like a big overview of the whole world. Okay. So we're gonna start off. We should be focused in on dear old Yomi over here. We're gonna zoom all the way out so that we can try to see everyone, right? So we've got Yomi, Ermor, Helheim, Femoria. We've got Ulm, Hinnom, Agartha, and Saramatia. And then we've got Ubar, Relay, Lanka, and Arcocephale. Okay? I'm just going to let this play through, and each tick, if you're unfamiliar, each tick is a turn, right? So we're going to see how everyone expands out. The world, right, expansion going pretty normal. We had some, you know, immediate aggression here, and Hinnom's expansion was so incredibly aggressive, right? Like, coming around this lake into someone else's cap circle. I guess that's not really aggressive expansion. That's a war declaration at that point, honestly. Ermor, Relay, this kind of scenario is all pretty typical. Ubar, Ulm, Agartha having some slow expansion. Alright, cool. Immediate war, right? Between Yomi and Ulm. Looks like Hinnom stepping in there a little bit as well. Ubar as well. Immediate war, right? With Helheim just aggroed Femoria straight in, basically. War against Gartha, or no, Lanka being attacked by, it looks like 3 different people, by Agartha, Arcocephale, and maybe a little bit of Relay. Yeah, definitely a little bit of Relay. So that's interesting. It is about this time period that I have now stepped into the game. So the vast majority of this up until this point, I think I came in, when did I come in? Turn 23-ish? Let's check my backups. Turn 24, I believe, was the first turn that we came in. So right at the start of turn, or year 3. So early fall. Oh, no, that can't be right, because we already own Ulm here. It's turn 0, turn 1, then... Sorry, year 0, year 2, 1, then year 2. So we came in at the beginning of year 2. So now we've taken Ulm. We had that whole scenario where we had to go back and forth. Looks like in that time, Arco has been... We're going to have to, like... I'm just going to let this continue playing. We're going to have to, like, dial in on specific areas, because there's a lot of action that has happened in this early game that I just wasn't in the game for, right? Like, when I got here, right, Arco was basically dead, Femoria was basically dead, Agartha was basically dead, but not quite. The very interesting stuff. This is our whole war with Hinnom scenario, us constantly raiding back and forth, raiding back and forth. We jumped into the whole Pastina area, got our ass kicked by Helheim, got thrown back. This war with Hinnom took a long time for us. But now we have actually taken them and immediately turned aggression on Ermor. And this is the many years war, like the 3 years, 4 years war of Helheim versus Lanka and Ubar at any given state. Helheim did such an amazing job fighting for such an incredibly long time. And I did not come to their aid, which I feel really bad about. Like, in hindsight, the fact that after Hinnom, right after Hinnom, I could have turned on Lanka or Ubar to aid Helheim, and I don't know that it would have helped me necessarily. And that's why I didn't do it, is because I thought if I did do that, I was like, I could maybe do enough damage and cause enough annoyance to get one of them to peace out with Helheim, and then Helheim could probably take on the other person by themselves, maybe, right? But I thought I would definitely lose my engagement, which is why I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go after Ermor instead and hope that Helheim can hold out. And actually, Helheim did hold out for a very, very long time. So that was really cool. But that's the end of the game. Late winter in year 7 of the Ascension Wars. Let's zoom in, right? We're gonna zoom in and we're gonna kind of like talk. Actually, let's save the zoom in on Yomi for the end, right? Because then we'll talk through all of the stuff that we did, etc., etc. Let's look at some of the other big players, right? Let's look at Helheim. Helheim is absolute. So we had at the end of the game, we had Yomi, we had Ubar, obviously the game's winner, Helheim, Lanka, and Relay, right? Were the only people still alive. So let's kind of like do a dive on each of them. So we're gonna pop in and watch Helheim specifically a little more closely. Not through the whole game necessarily, maybe, but at least to start off. So great expansion, right? Compared to at 5, compared to 3, compared to 4, 6 here. Holy crap! Good job, Arcos Folly. Compared to 4, compared to 5. So doing very good, which is very like Helheim, right? Bumped up to 7 on that one, right? No, bumped up to 8 at that point. So this is where, just gonna go crazy on expansion. And poor Agartha above them is just not expanding well at all. Lanka did not expand very well either, which is probably the note for the aggression between Arco, Agartha, and Relay. And we've basically, at this point, like, war has already begun between Helheim and Fomorria, right? Like, these types of borders, I think Helheim actually just took that. No, maybe not. It takes this throne already. Actually, Helheim being relatively restrained in this initial scenario. 2 forts all up, 3 forts up in spring of year 1. Holy crap. And now unleashed, right? Arco getting a little involved as well, apparently, interestingly enough. Elfs Fomorria, Helheim Elfs Fomorria, very aggressively Elfs Fomorria. So that's probably what that lull was when I was like, oh, the war has already started. The war hadn't started, but it had, because Helheim was stealthing units into Fomorria's territory, and then we had like 1, 2, 3-ish turns of nothing, and then boom, they all pop. So that's I mean, and Arco getting involved in this as well is very funny, right? Arcos Fale was very opportunistic at the beginning of the game, it seems. They had decent expansion for themselves, and then also were relatively aggressive going into wars with both Vamoria and Lanka. Helheim lasting. Okay. After the war against Vamoria, it looks like Arco goes in on Lanka, has a little bit of aid perhaps from Agartha. Ooh, it looks like Hinnom went on Agartha pretty early as well, though. Probably what happened is Agartha, Arco, and Relay are on Lanka. And then as that is not ending immediately, right, Lanka is calling in Hinnom. So Hinnom's coming in and eating Agartha. And then I think it calls in Helheim. And Helheim just, in an instant, goes from working with Arco Cephale to killing Arco Cephale, and does so very quickly, it looks like. At this point, we were in on the game, so we were actually able to see some of these wars. I remember battles. I remember watching them. I say very quickly, but Arco actually, tried to put up a fight. But they were attacked from the south by Sarmatia, the west by Ubar. Lanka really didn't get to be involved. They were mostly defending themselves, taking a couple little edge pieces back. So, interestingly, Lanka calling in, or maybe they didn't even call in Helheim, but Lanka being rescued by Helheim and by Hinnom didn't really do a lot for Lanka in the fact of what they regained from land. But it did obviously give them the impetus to do other stuff and start taking stuff back from Agartha. Lanka's got a very interesting little land situation. Helheim is just huge at this point. 3 caps, very strong. But it is at this point, right, that the eternal war begins. Right, the war against Ubar has begun. We can see all of the elfing going on over here. And I think Lanka enters into the fray. Right, Ubar was there for a while. Was fighting themselves on their own for a while and doing well, but not winning necessarily. This is where I got called in, got popped. And I think Lanka is now Lanka is now involved. So now it's Lanka v Ubar, or Lanka and Ubar v Helheim for a long, long time. And me just kind of messing around. All these constant changes back and forth and back and forth. And it's just too much, right? It would be one thing if Helheim had taken another individual rather than going on Ubar. I don't know who instigated that fight, but at a certain point in time, right? Back in this era, when it was when Helheim had Vamoria and Arcocephale, right? If Helheim had just turned on Lanka, rather than going, I don't know if this was in Helheim's control or not, right? But they are now at war with Ubar. If they had just jumped Lanka instead and just devoured them, I don't know that the world would have been able to do anything about it, right? That being said, though, the Lanka player did a really good job of consistently turtling and defending their land. So there were absolutely scenarios where you saw at the beginning of the game, right? And we'll watch it again, but Lanka gets jumped by 3 players and survives, and comes back to be one of the final players in the game, which is super cool. But yeah, that's just kind of sad that Helheim had such explosive growth, such good movements against Vamoria and Arcocephale, and then just kind of gets stonewalled by Ubar and Lanka. Honestly, they probably could have even just turned on me, and that would have been a different pathway for victory, because so the time period, where do we have? Right around here, yeah, from the transition from summer to fall in year 4 is where I had been convinced by Ubar and Lanka that we needed to deal with Helheim or else. And at this point, I realize now that that was kind of bullshit. They had Helheim and Lanka, or they had Helheim perfect. Well, it was a bullshit, right? Helheim was definitely a threat, but they had prevented Helheim's earlier throne rush, and that wasn't gonna happen now. So there, me entering in was just giving Helheim an opportunity to bloody my nose, and that's why I immediately pulled out. I was just like, yeah, Helheim is so far ahead of me that I will just be a stooge if I do anything else in this war, right? Which lost us Pistena for a very long time. Yeah, man. Look at this. Helheim does such a great job raiding Lanka down, but to Lanka's credit, Lanka does such a good job of just never losing a fortification. So, that's really cool. And eventually, just resources wear Helheim down, back and forth between Ubar and Helheim. I think Ubar just scales just phenomenally as a nation. I think Lanka does too, but Ubar is, I don't know, Ubar is crazy, crazy good in the late game. They have some just amazing access to really, really good spells later on, I think, anyways. I think they're really cool. I kind of want to play an Ubar game. I don't know when the hell I'm going to have time to do that, but I kind of want to play an Ubar game because I think it's a really, really neat nation. Anyways, so that was kind of like a look at Helheim. Let's take a look. We'll save Ubar for kind of like second to last. Let's take a look at Relay, right? So Relay, I think, is an interesting early age nation. They're uncontested in the pond in this particular scenario, so they had an opportunity, I think, to really be a strong threat. Part of the issue, though, is this is a relatively small pond, right? Clicking the wrong things. Apparently, if you right-click, it fucks up. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 water provinces, which is, it's intentionally designed, right? Whereas most players are gonna get, I say that, but I mean, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? You have the 9 block around you, and then you're fighting for potentially 12 to 15. So Relay is unfortunately kind of like stuck in their pond for the majority of this game. They get a toehold on the lands to the south with Hinnom. They get brought into this war against Lanka. So they have the Cloudbreakers down here. They get brought into this war against Lanka, I thought. Yeah, so I don't know if they're just vulturing here, but they come in and then they just kind of get thrown back, right? And then they're never able to really do anything else. I think around the time, maybe a little after I jumped into the game, so it's maybe around this time that there was a sub brought in for Relay, and I think the sub had to take a while to kind of like figure out, okay, because they got brought into a game, or brought into a point at the game where it was like, there was a lot of establishment around them, and it was like, okay, how the hell do I do anything from here? And they had to spend a while trying to figure out what can they even do. And then eventually they decided to attack Ermor, and this just ended up being a kind of another forever war until I stepped in, right? Because I think the first one is, yeah, it's in year 3. Boom, war starts, and this lasts for a while, right? So this lasts until after I conquer Hinnom, Just this consistent back and forth raiding as Relay is trying to do something against Ermor. But I think at that point in the game, Relay was so far behind, right, from not having any traction in the beginning and then having a sub, right? Like I was lucky enough to sub into a position where my prior player had traction, like we had conquered Ulm, so I was kind of like gift basketed a decent beginning. Um, Whereas I don't think Relay was. Ooh, I also want to check Agartha, because so Agartha was another sub that jumped into this game around the time that I did, and they made some really good plays trying to fight against Hinnom, but they were ultimately unsuccessful. But they had a much worse start than I was handed, basically. So we got Agartha versus Hinnom. So originally, Agartha, I've pointed this out a couple times, Agartha expands relatively slowly. So does Lanka, though. And then it kind of like, it looks like there's a natural scenario there, right? Like, if they've both expanded slowly and Arco brings, Arco's attacking Lanka, then Agartha jumping in to try to get some Agarthan land is a natural scenario as well, right? But it just doesn't work out for Agartha, I don't think. Hinnom comes in and starts to just eat all of the adjacent Lunken land, and then just turns on Agartha. So that was super aggressive. Because right, like I'm not missing that, right? Like this is Lanka territory. Yeah. So Lanka comes in, takes all of this territory. Hinnom, Arcos Fale has already attacked Lanka. Hinnom basically goes, no, steps in, attacks, and then I guess at this point, right, assumes, all right, Lanka's done, because Arco is dealing with them, and Relay is dealing with them. I can't attack them anymore. And just immediately turns into Agartha instead, right? And Agartha is getting slammed, and it's about this time, probably winter of year 1 or early spring, where the Agarthan sub comes in, right? And they begin to try to do what they can against Hinnom, and they actually have a very long, defense where they're rolling around with like a little doom stack. Honestly, I don't think part of the battle against Hinnom was just like, hey, us subs got to stick together kind of scenario, right? Because I was in communication with that sub for a while at the beginning, just kind of like talking about how the positions we subbed into were, and so it was that scenario of like, yeah, I'll attack. I'll hit a Hinnom for you. It's a horrible one province front for a war, but let's go, right? Just because it didn't make sense from a target standpoint, but it was a scenario of like I wasn't in it to win it necessarily, and I was just trying to have fun, and it was a fun situation. Ultimately, though, it didn't matter for Agartha because they were so far gone at that point. So that's Agartha wrapped up. I did not realize that they had this little holdout in the heavy sea for such a long time. Let's take a look at Saramatia. I feel like we're probably just going to take a look at most people here. Saramatia was doing fine when I came into the game, but they get hit by the Ubar Helheim train, I believe, right? Like, so as Helheim is eating people, Ubar is also trying to rapidly eat people. They do part of Ulm in the beginning with me, with the previous Yomi player, and then they kind of like jump into as the Arco scenario is happening, they're jumping down into Saramatia, I believe is how that all played out, right? So yeah, so Saramatia, again, another scenario where like these junior partners, and at the time they probably don't think of themselves as like junior partners, right? But these junior partners are coming into wars, right, against targets. Helheim and Arco went against Memoria, and then Helheim turned on Arco. Saramatia is going in against Arco as well, right? And as that is happening, Sarmatia is the one who takes the brunt of some counterattacks, it looks like. Ubar comes in. Helheim is going to get Arco. And then Ubar just swings into Sarmatia like, holy shit. The same thing is kind of like what happened with Hinnom. Hitting Lanka and then just clotheslining Agartha is just this scenario of like, hot damn. Maybe the reason why Helheim got brought into the war against Ubar was a call from Sarmatia, right? Because Sarmatia had been helping Helheim against Arco, and then Ubar comes in and vultures and then hits Sarmatia. So maybe Sarmatia was like, yo, Helheim, help me out. And Helheim tried, but Sarmatia just got kind of situation. So. And then a couple of little vestiges of Sarmatia do hang on for quite a while, right? Because Helheim and Ubar are in this conflict up until this point. But all right, that's mostly. Let's take a look at Lanka. Lanka does some cool stuff through this. So really slow expansion, right? 4 provinces by late summer, 5 by early fall, 6 by fall, 7 single turn expansions, 8, 9, 10. All right. Okay, so now we're starting to get like 2 or 3 expansions per turn. But at this point, Arco is all up in Lanka's business, right? Like this one here in Debrithia, I'd be like, bullshit, right? That is 3 from your capital, 2 from mine. Get out of there. Plus it's just so garish, right? Like I'm just like border gore all over the place. But at the same time, right? Like Lanka coming down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 away from his capital, right? Into the steppe of wild horses. Just asking to get aggressed upon by Hinnom or Agartha. Although, at this point, I think the scenario of Agartha coming out maybe was going to happen regardless. Although, I did accuse Agartha of getting into a war. It doesn't look like Agartha never attacked Lanka. So I don't know how much I believe of the concept of Lanka was in a 3-way war at the beginning of the game. Maybe the 3-way war is Hinnom, right? So it wasn't Agartha, it was Arco, Hinnom, and Relay. So that's fair. But that's like, I don't know, that's like a 2.5 war, right? Because Hinnom takes 4 provinces and then immediately is like, okay, I'm out of the war, attacks Agartha. Relay jumps up on land and Arco goes in, but then Arco gets hit by Helheim. So, yeah, I guess that all makes sense. That's rough. But Lanka holds on, right? Like, Lanka has 2 forts, holds on for a very long time. And as Helheim comes in and starts to eat... Ooh, my goodness. How did Lanka manage to actually get this far in the game? To get to the end of the game and be as big as they were. That's kind of crazy. So this is not a very big Lanka at all for halfway through this game. Like closing on turn 40, 45, right? That type of scenario. And then I guess that's the situation, right? Like, as I'm fighting against Hinnom, they get the opportunity to come in and take the Agarthan lands. That increase in their size, that is absolutely the reason why they are able to continue for the rest of this game being a power, right? But good on them for defending themselves for such a long time. Like, this whole time period, as Helheim is raiding them down, the fact that they're not just dropping forts constantly is crazy, right? That's really cool. I would have loved to have seen some of the battles between... Wait, did they lose? Did they... They killed their cap. That's funny. So this is interesting. This is them destroying their capital, destroying their own capital, and then putting it back up with was it 3 red seconds? That type of scenario. Because that is a citadel and it has better recruitment points and things like that, better administrative percentages. So that's pretty interesting. I think let's look at us now. Because so all we really have left, if we go back to the beginning, right, we're gonna have Ermor and Hinnom that we haven't really like zeroed in on, or Ulm. Those are all people that we're going to be looking as we kind of like go through our situation. And then there's Ubar, right? So Ubar, we're gonna do. I say that let's do Ubar first, right? We'll do Ubar now. No. We'll do us first, and then Ubar won the game, right? So we'll end the video with watching through from Ubar's perspective, kind of situation, and go from there. So let's do us. So I'm gonna try to take this kind of slow, and we're gonna talk about the actual game, right? So these first 2 years, I am not in control. This is the original player, so I'm just gonna be like, hey, what's going on? So expansion on turn 3. Pretty typical type scenario. Single province expansion. Our Dominion is going out pretty good. 2 provinces into another 2 provinces into 1 province into 1 province into 2 provinces. So not horrible, but not the best, right? So we're at 10 provinces right now. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, immediately taking that province from Ulm. 17, 18, and those are basically the established provinces of Yomi. So we got 2 of the 3 contested with Ubar. No. Oh, did we actually get farm? What happened there? We did. Oh, I did not see this. So we got 2 of the 3 contested with Ubar. We got 1 of the 3 contested with Ermor, but then we lost it before I ever came in, and it looks like Ermor picks it up. I wonder if that got sold or anything like that. We got all 3 of the contested with Vamoria, but Vamoria is basically... yeah. Vamoria basically just gets jumped. Kind of a weird border with all these mountains here. I bet... ah, shit. I bet whatever was down here was a little rough for them to take. So 3 of the contested with Vamoria, and then up here with Ulm, I mean, we get it because that's super hyper aggressive, and we, attack them basically, and they're also getting jumped by Hinnom, but we take all 3 of the contested border with Ulm, and then we just go in. Looks like Saramatia also goes in. This is a unfortunate, like Saramatia. I think Saramatia got kind of screwed here, to be honest. Their border is so ugly and so hard to fight anyone else through, right? These ponds in the way basically make it, these ponds and rivers make it to where trying to attack Ulm is all but impossible, right? Almost the same thing going down into Vamoria, right? Like this big pond, rivers on either side, they have to come around these ways. Over on the Agarthan side, they have a little bit better of a situation, but they've got these mountain ranges still in the way and another pond. And then up north, going towards Arcos Valley is probably their best scenario, but again, still multiple mountain ranges, a river, it's honestly kind of gruesome that they have to that they had no great avenues for attacking anyone. Arcocephali probably their best bet, but my god. So some fights back and forth. Ulm trying to do what they can against the aggressors of Hinnom. The Hinnom thing is very strange to me. Basically against Yomi and Ubar. Hinnom doesn't look like Hinnom was fighting Ulm for this territory. It looks like they just went skirt through and was like, don't touch my shit. Right? And in a very obvious kind of like, obviously Ulm's gonna touch your shit. That's their cap circle, you know? Oh my goodness. That's strange. That's very strange to me. That's some crazy aggressive expansion. So it's about at this point that we come in to the game, where we inherit things. So this is where we inherit the game. So I want to pause and look at game state, because this is where we came in. We at this point in time are not doing horribly. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 17 18 19 20. We have 20 provinces. We're winning a war against our first target. We came in, and there's a diplomatic agreement that Yomi gets the capital, right? But has to pay Ubar for it, which is very painful. What else is going on? Ubar is expanded well, and picked up some provinces from Ulm. Hinnom has expanded mostly well and is at war, has taken provinces from Lanka, and is now in a big war with Agartha. Ermor has established their borders, and we'll revisit what's going on there here in a second. Agartha had bad expansion and then got jumped by Hinnom. Lanka has been jumped by Arco and Relay and Hinnom. Helheim has already conquered Vamoria and is, I think, about to elf Arcocephale. Sarmatia has a very difficult area, but they're expanding well. Arco, I think, has already been hit by Helheim at this point. That's about it. The thing that I wanted to talk about, though, is as we jump into this, I think, is the biggest moment where the Ermor player messed up. Because as soon as I came into this situation, there were multiple large armies on my border from Ermor, and I did some tap dancing to be like, yo, don't attack me, please and thank you. And they didn't, right? Like, and they should have. I think, absolutely should have. If they had, I think they would have just killed me. I honestly do think that. We would have made them pay, and that's basically the reason why they didn't attack us, is because I had that threat leveraged. I was like, look, you will probably win, but I will make it very painful for you. I will make it as painful for you as I possibly can. At this point, right, we had basic stuff for Diones, the concept of like Iron Skin, Temper Flesh. We already had Regeneration and Awe on our Bless, which was an interesting, serviceable Bless scenario. So we might not have won. I don't think we would have won against what we were facing there, but I think we would have been able to make it painful. But I think Ermor should have done it, right? I think Ermor should have done it because Helheim is already going in on Arca, right? Hinnom is busy with Agartha. Relay is busy with Lanka, and I am busy with Ulm. I have the best border for Ermor to attack. They were prepared. They would have been on my capital in 2 turns, and I don't think I would have stopped them. I think it would have done a little bit of damage to them here or there. I would have made it as painful as I could. But I think they would have won. I think they would have won enough to call Ubar in. Ubar would have probably taken Ulm and then taken our northern scenarios. And I think Ermor would have taken the rest of it. I think that should have been game for us. And I think, honestly, they probably could have gotten Saramasha to jump in on us as well. So, but the first turn that I came in was basically like, hey, do you want a nap? 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 Because I was 90% sure that Ermor was going to jump me and kill me. And then I talked them off that ledge, and then I had naps with basically everyone, and I was like, oh, shit, that's not great. But whatever. So we come in. It does take us several turns, right? We tried to take Ulm with the initial force that was there, that the Yomi player had left us. But there was not a good enough force to do that. It got thrown off. Then we took Ulm, and in the same turn that we took Ulm, we basically were like, okay, now we're going on Hinnom. It is at this time, right? Hinnom had been fighting against the Agarthan player, and I want to throw this out there, right? The Agarthan sub came in and did a lot of work throwing back Hinnom, but I think the damage had been done at that point, and they just couldn't do enough to really recover. But as I said earlier, right, it was that scenario of I was just in the game as a sub. I was just there to have fun and cause chaos, and it was a scenario of like us subs got to stick together. So I went in on Hinnom, and very early on, by the way. So as Saramasha is dying, you're gonna see me pick up some Saramashan territory here, and I'm now sieging down Pistenna, right? This is at the point where Hinnom sends a giant stack into my territory. And this is the flag swapping here and here. So we watch as this comes all through my territory. And is on my capital, then off my capital. And then they're going back, and this is where we kill them in Flemistan, right? Where we wiped that entire big stack of Anakites, and Hinnom's power is basically broken in that instance. We've taken Pistenna now. Saramasha is fallen, and it's at this point. It's either at this point or right before this point. I think it was right before this point, actually. I think it was right before the big stack started marching into my territory. I think it was in Menace or it was in Tapanete at that point, where I had been talked to by Helheim and Lanka that we needed, and Saramasha, kind of, no, not Saramasha. Saramasha was in a war with Ubar. I've been talked to by Ubar and Lanka to be like, hey, Helheim is throne rushing, you need to get in on this, you need to help prevent Helheim from winning. And this is at the point where I was like, okay, Hinnom, I will step out of this war with you and let you go back to doing whatever it is you need to do. And Hinnom was like, Hinnom asked, let's see if, okay, so we're going to go back. I think it was about here as they're in Menace and Tapanete, right? Summer of year 3. So they're doing okay right here. Getting raided a little bit by Lanka, still a couple of Agarthan lands, but most of the Agarthan threat taken care of. I'm raiding them lightly. It's fine. They make some pretty extreme demands on like wanting multiple provinces, right? More than they're starting, like Scardian Vale and Flemistan or something like that, right? And wanting a buy-off. And I was like, look, I'm not afraid to fight you. I am more than willing to keep killing you. That will happen, but I'm trying to do what the world state wants me to do, right? Which is work against Helheim. And but Hinnom just wasn't having it, so that led to this scenario. And I think they weren't having it because I think at this point they had gone through the entire game with these big Anakite stacks, and nothing could really do anything against these big Anakite stacks. And so they start marching. They know that they have this Anakite stack marching into my territory, and they're like, "We've got this." And they get to my capital, and then they pull off, and then they get popped. Because that's when we had, like, I don't know, like 200 Ko Oni or something like that, and a big stack of Aka Oni just basically run in and go whack, 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 whack with their clubs because they hit so freaking hard. It's crazy. And that was it. Like, in that 6 turns of kind of like, hey, I'll end this war, to, hey, this stack is popped, that was basically the end for Hinnom, right? They get super raided by Lanka, lose all of the Agarthan lands. I raid the crap out of them, and they're able to counter raid, right? But they don't have anything to resist. So I come in, take Jabero. They do throw me off of one of their provinces. I think their capital initially, but then we take Marini. And then we have, you know, a foothold right next to their capital, and it's literally just strangling them down. We bring in reinforcements, break their capital, break their last fort, and then that's that. So very interesting stuff. At this point, though, or while that has happened, I did not. So after Hinnom was like, no, we're not having peace, right? Unless you give me these things. And I was like, I'm not doing that. We're going to fight until we both die. I still was like, I probably need to help against Hinnom or Helheim, or else the game's just going to end. So I end my nap with Helheim, as Helheim is still at war with Ubar. And this is a time period where Helheim has won. Shit. This is a time period where Helheim has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thrones. But this is the unclaimed throne. So they have 6 throne provinces, but they only have 5 thrones claimed. And I believe it was Lanka who actually saved the day. Ubar fought very hard, but I think it was actually Lanka who saved the day and prevented Helheim from being able to cap the final throne. It's really funny, actually, because they come in and as soon as our nap is over, they hit Pistina so hard, and I was like, whoop, I just gave them the other throne. Because again, 1, 2, this throne is gone from them now, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they have Pistina. But they're unable to take it. Did they need 6? And it's at this point, right, like, there's a brief window for them to have potentially won, I think. But Ubar comes and takes another throne away from them. So that is what it is. So that was when the whole world was basically on high alert, and I almost just gift wrapped Helheim the game. And yeah, that was fun. And immediately after that, right, like, as soon as Helheim hit Pistina, I was like, oh, I see what tech you're on. I see all of the things that you have right now. I will die excruciatingly if I fight you, especially because most of my military might is up in Hinnom through this weird narrow corridor because I'm fighting a stupid war, which was fun, but it was very stupid. And then, so I was immediately just like, yeah, okay. So if I do this, I can maybe distract Helheim while they're eating my lands. Distract Helheim for Ubar and Lanka, but it's not going to be good for me. So I was just like, screw it. Doing this might lose the game, right? Like, I immediately pieced out Helheim, right? And they let me, right? Because they were happy to not have to mess around with me. Happy to be able to focus on Ubar and Lanka. because if I had stayed in the war with Helheim, I would have lost. Guaranteed, right? If I and I would have been incredibly weak. I was probably the weakest of the three. Maybe not the weakest of the three. Maybe Lanka and I were kind of like tied for that position, but definitely weaker than Ubar, right? If I had continued in that scenario, I would have just gotten my face bashed in because I was so far behind in research, right? And then Helheim maybe would have gotten worn down, but I would not have benefited from it at all. I would have maybe come out of it with a few minor lands, but probably not. Probably 5 or 6 provinces at most, right? Whereas Ubar and Lanka would have been able to take large chunks, like large swaths here and large swaths here, which actually probably would have been the most beneficial for Lanka. Regardless, though, the alternative was, okay, that leaves Helheim, a very strong Helheim, fighting against a strong Ubar and a strong-ish Lanka, right? And the scenario was, someone's going to get strong from that, and Helheim could just win the game. Basically, I made the decision of, look, if Helheim is going to just win the game, then Helheim's just going to win the game. Me helping or me throwing my face into that wall is still me losing the game. So screw that. I'm going to go try to do something over here that maybe in the long run will help me win the game versus not doing what will just lose me the game regardless, right? So this was a very big crapshoot. And I do think I don't know. I think it was the right call. But I think it was slow. I was slow in what I tried to do. It's at this point, right, that we take Hinnom. Immediately, we were already, like, Hinnom is not even dead. We're already going against Ermor, already raiding everything down there. But it was at this point that the game had kind of become a slog for me. And I stopped really trying to make drastic improvements. It's at this point that a lot of the tech that we would have needed to do really well against Ubar or Helheim or Lanka in the end game, we were acquiring. So we have, a year-ish as we defeat Hinnom, right? Maybe a year and a half or more. Where probably more than that, probably 15 to 20 turns, right? Yeah, a year and a half to 2 years, where we have beaten Hinnom and we have started a war against Ermor, which I still think the war against Ermor was probably the best plan for us. But the way that we went about it was so nonchalant and so non-committal. And the entire time that I was doing that, I was very much just like, not passing turns, so to speak, right? I was continuing to do rituals, continuing to forge things, but I wasn't really trying to plan for the future of against Ubar, against Lanka. I was just going rote, right? It was very much the scenario of, okay, well, this is working, so we'll just keep doing this. I wasn't making future plans, and I needed to be making future plans now in order to survive at the end of the game. And you can see that in this war against Ermor. And I actually talked about it during the war against Ermor, where it was the situation where it's like, when you play, and this is not a knock at anyone, right? This is an explanation. And a lot of people are going to understand what I'm saying here. When you play against really good players, they drive you to be better than you are, right? When you play against players that are pulling out weird tricks or guessing what you're going to do ahead of time, all of those different types of things, they drive you to bring your A game, right? You start trying to think of the things that you can do to counter those things. You start trying to second guess the scenario of like, okay, well, they caught me doing this. What can I do that they're not going to expect, right? You kind of level up your gameplay by playing against people that are better than you. When you're playing against people that are as good as you, which I think this Ermor player is as good as me, or worse than you, right? Which I don't think anyone in this game was worse than I am. You get into a situation where whatever is working, right? Like, you're not incentivized to do more or think about more or come up with exciting new things unless it's just like a pastime. Again, this goes back to the scenario of this game is so long and there's so much time that goes into the game. And especially, this is probably a poor excuse, but as a YouTuber or a streamer, right? Doing videos on top of actually doing the turns is an additional time constraint. So there's even more time that I'm spending on the game, and that means that a lot of the time that's not necessarily planning, right? Or being good at the game. It's just more time in the game, or dedicated to the game, where you get into the scenario where things turn into a slog, right? And you lose that incentive to be clever, to be creative, to drive more. I definitely hit this point in the game. I think if we had gone into the war with Ermor with the full force of what we had to offer, and we had been planning things for the future against Lanka, against Ubar, potentially even against Helheim, depending on how things worked out, I think we would see a very different Yomi at the end of year 6, going into year 7, compared to what we do in this game. I still think we probably would have lost to Ubar or Lanka, where we see them at the end of the game. And there's mixed reasons for that. I think the Ubar player and the Lanka player are both better players than I am. But I also think Ubar and Lanka are both better late game nations than Yomi is, right? So I think they had double threat on me there. But because I wasn't prepping for it, I think I didn't have a chance. And we saw that, right? We saw that in the final battles against Ubar, where I was just horribly dominated because I didn't have half the stuff that I could have or should have brought. Didn't have that in range of the locations that we were at, or just forgot to script it, or blah 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 blah, right? So that, I think, is kind of the way things went in a nutshell. I had a lot of fun with this game. I think Yomi is a very interesting nation, but I subbed into it, and my heart was definitely not in the game for the most part. Again, it's kind of difficult to say, oh, I'm super into this game, or I'm super not into this game at any time when you're playing Dominions, because I was super into this game at certain points. But when those points are spread over the course of months, right, it's hard to be super in it all of the time, right? So there were definitely highlights in this game that I was super excited about. The war against Hinnom, I actually really did enjoy. Jumping into a sub position was a unique thing. It was very... Ooh, I don't think the player that I subbed in for necessarily was doing anything crazy wrong or anything like that. I would have made different choices, but I don't think they were better or worse choices necessarily. Yeah. There were a lot of things that I should have done differently. I did learn quite a few things, maybe not as many things as I did from my Tetragrammaton game. But I did learn a fair amount in this, and I don't know, I'm really excited for the next game coming up. There's some really cool stuff in the next big game that I'm currently recording right now, or currently playing and recording right now, actually. So kind of looking forward to seeing how that all turns out. Let's go ahead and ride this to the end. We've got Ubar, late winter. Okay, I've yacked enough about my experiences, about Yomi, about all of the different things, etc., etc. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, and we're going to follow Ubar all the way through. So, very tame expansion initially. Things are going fine. little hemmed in here, right, by Yomi and by Ulm, gets into a war with Ulm, and, you know, Yomi, right, makes some agreements, gives over Ulm to me, has a, I think, probably an infrastructure period at this point, right? And then the wars with with Arcos Fale begin, comes in, vultures things, or maybe just fully declares, and then jumps into Sarmatia, right? The entire time the Sarmatian war is happening, Helheim is just, we see the flags all over the place, jumping, peppering everywhere. And this is honestly kind of Ubar's life for a solid, like, 3 years, right? You do not see a lot of territorial gain or expansion. It's wars back and forth with Helheim, a little bit of peace. There was a time period, right, where they had peace with Helheim and they ended their nap with me because they were going to come on me. And then Helheim started to beat the crap out of Lanka, and they were like, never mind, we're not doing that. And then you start to see very marginal gains towards the end of the game, as Helheim is just exhausted by endless war between Lanka and Ubar. And at the end of the game, right, like, Ubar wins with 3 caps. That is not an especially massive Ubar, right? And they don't even have... Maybe they do. Okay, well, so about halfway through, right, they take Arco from Helheim. Boom. And that's their 3rd cap, and they hold that for the rest of the game. How many thrones do they have at this point? They have 1, 2, 3 thrones. They don't have them all claimed, but they have 3 thrones. Have 3 thrones claimed now. Still just 3 thrones. Okay. Just took Druid land, right? So have access to 4 thrones. Just took Vena, have access to 5 thrones, and have taken the 5 thrones, and now they jump over to Feral Woods. You know what? I gotta honestly wonder if... Lanka kind of just gave this over. So I had a nap with Ubar, right? So I was very surprised by getting hit by them on Feral Woods. Now again, right, I think I do believe them when they say, maybe I believe them when they say that they did not realize I was on Feral Woods. You know, it was still controlled by Helheim at that point. So I'm not mad or upset or anything about it at all. I think it ended a very long game, right? Or what would have been an even longer game. But I wonder if, because there's a pretty long point between here, right? Between Druid land getting taken here. Actually, Ubar is all over Vena down here this entire time, right? So, is right next to it the entire time. Druid land gets taken. Lanka knows he has this, and knows he is right next to Vena. takes that. This is where I started to be like, uh-oh, Ubar has 4 thrones. We need to watch out. And then takes this one, right? And at this point, you gotta be like, I would assume Blanco would be like, oh, yep, Ubar's a problem. Jump, 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 right? I wonder if Lanka at this point was just like, nah, fuck it, I don't care. As long as Helheim doesn't win, I'm down. I kind of feel like maybe that was the situation. Which, again, same kind of scenario as me. I do not mind that in any way, shape, form, or fashion, because I think otherwise this was going to be a very long, excruciating game. If I had been allowed to, after the war with Urmor, if I had been allowed to bunker up in Feral Woods and Sanguine Swamp and just kind of like start to, you know, go into free spawn, production mode, etc., etc., that would have been a very interesting situation. You know what I find really, really cool and funny? I wonder how many. I think it would be really, really interesting to know. Ubar came in with a lot of stuff on Feral Woods, right? I'm assuming the vast majority of it jumped from Vena to Feral Woods. I wonder how much got attacked by horrors from Astral Corruption. I wonder how much got lost, or if any of it got lost, right? That's really, really interesting. Alright, anyways, this was a really cool game. I had a lot of fun with it. Yomi is not my preferred nation. I think there are some really fun things about it. I'm not super into... Like, free spawn is okay. There are certain free spawn nations that I'm like, yeah, free spawn's really neat. And then other free spawn nations that I'm like, yeah, free spawn's not so neat. Yomi has really cool free spawn. But the coolest free spawns are not necessarily... They get so many Ko-Oni. So many Ko-Oni. And I actually think Ko-Oni are really, really neat. But they get so few Oni or Kuro-Oni or the... Amanajakus or whatever their actual names are, right? Like, those specialized Oni, they get so few of them, it's kind of unfortunate. It would be really, really cool if they got more of those scenarios. There are a couple of pretty neat national spells that they get. I wish that they were geared a little more towards the late game, because I think Yomi is pretty decent in the early to mid game with their thugs and their super combatants, but I feel like they really kind of fall off with what they can do in the late game. I had the ability to focus on blood way earlier. I should have done that. I should have just gone crazy with blood as soon as I could and just produced 40,000 vampires and blood hunted the entirety of my landscape into the abyss. But I didn't do that, so that's kind of unfortunate. I don't know, like, Yomi... Death is one of my favorite paths. Yomi has that in spades. But there's just something... I think it's honestly the income malice that just fucks with me. It just feels so bad trying to manage your finances while playing Yomi that it just doesn't feel worth it, right? Even when you're conquering things, it still feels like you're always incredibly poor. And that's partially because you are, right? Because of the income malice, but also because of the unrest that gets generated, right? Even if you're trying to be very cautious and you're doing Oni pits or things like that, right? You still have to go pick up Oni from across your empire and drop them off, and you're still constantly sitting at that fluctuating, like, oh, maybe you have 5 to 15 unrest in a province, right? But if that's every province, then it kind of makes it to where you're constantly at another minus 20-25% of your income comparatively, and it's just excruciating. Top it off, right, with not only I think this is actually the biggest thing. Like, I hate the income malice, but the biggest thing I think is their shitty ass forts. I just don't enjoy playing any nation that has such crappy forts that you only ever get one commander point out of them, that's debilitating. It's so hard for me to play a nation that does that, that I just, every time I do that, I walk away from it going like, that's just not fun. That's just not fun. It's really rough. That type of scenario, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know why, right? Right, like the income malice there is already going to prevent you from shoveling out a crap ton of commanders, right? You don't have enough income to be able to do that. So I don't even know that it would matter if you, like, if you could, what are you going to shovel out? Naminari's, whatever. You don't, they're not great. Are you gonna, it's Onishugos? You're gonna pay a crap ton for Onishugos and all the forts that you have? No, they may be sacred, but they're still expensive, right? So I don't know. I don't get one or the other, right? I feel like one or the other makes sense for Yomi, but the fact that they have both, they have so little money, and it's hard for them to spend it. Spending that money in good ways is difficult, right? I'll say that. That I don't know. I just don't. They don't click for me. That being said, Dione are super cool, right? Dione are super cool. Demons are very neat. I wish there was some more specific demon. I guess there is specific demon stuff in Blood, but I wish maybe there was some more specific demon stuff for Yomi to empower demons with, kind of like how M8 Ermor, or maybe like Celeria, those types of nations get things to empower undead, those types of things. Because I do kind of feel like if you're reliant on the late game, demon cleansing is just going to kick your ass, right? And demon cleansing is so easy for almost anyone to put up. Like, it's not difficult to break into water if you have 0 water. It's not difficult to break into water, and demon cleansing is just going to kick your ass every single time. It's one thing if you're doing like Storm Demons or Fiends of Darkness or Black Knights or something like that, right? But like if you just have a wall of Ko-Onis, I think Demon Cleansing will beat the crap out of you. maybe not. I've experienced it so few times that I might just have a really bad perception of it. So either way, I think they're an interesting and unique nation. Just maybe not for me. So, that is the end of Dreamers Game 1 from 2021. I feel like I need to have better titles because I'm just repeatedly... I feel like I play so few games that all of my games just are starting to end up being Lucid tournament games, basically. So I can't just be like, hey, it's the Lucid tournament game. Yeah, half of them are Lucid tournament game. Get out of here. Anyways, that's it for Dreamers Game 1, where we play Yomi. Solid loss, I think, on this particular one. Had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one, because some fun shit happens. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. It really helps me out. If you'd like to see me live, head over to my Twitch at twitch.tv/thedistanthorizon.